ago. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia. Many of you know me as the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. And joining us today is a guest that comes courtesy of another friend of mine from the Audio Maze Circle. Shout out to Colton. Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it. So, our guest today is an avid reader, birdwatcher, JRPG and board game player, student of history, and metal music fan. He also writes books occasionally. A San Diego native, he resides in San Antonio with his wife and daughter, and he's been trying to escape the gravitational pull of Texas for years, to no avail. And in this interview, we're going to be talking about his first book, Mourn Not the Mortals. So without further ado, let's give a huge round of applause to today's guest, author Jordan Smith. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Super happy to be here. Just ready to answer all your questions about the book, and let's get this going.
Awesome, Jordan. So before we dive into your first book, is there anything else you'd like to add about your background?
Well, I will say that for the part about Texas, if that doesn't make sense, this is my fourth stint living in Texas. I'm currently in San Antonio. I've lived in Abilene, El Paso, and the middle of nowhere Panhandle. So it is not my favorite place, but it's where I currently reside. I'm from California, but I've lived in Florida and Washington, so all over. The book, I guess, the story has traveled with me all around the country before finally being published here. But yeah, like I said, like the bio said, I live here with my wife and my daughter. Avid fantasy fan, love bird watching, love all the nerdy stuff that you'd expect an author of high fantasy series to like. And I also studied history too, so a little bit of a fan of history as well, just like yourself.
Awesome. And for your first book, I don't want to give too much away, but as a little teaser, what can people expect?
Well, they can expect a high fantasy story about, I tell people all the time, I've mastered, I wrote 130,000 words, but I haven't mastered the art of being able to explain it in 30 seconds or less. But I will try. Generally, a good description, it's about a declining empire of zealots, directly opposed by a kingdom that built its power on the backs of children with special abilities. And they're both in this race to acquire this ancient relic left behind by a race of people that is all but extinct. So they're both trying to get their hands on this relic, and they believe that whoever wrests it away will have great power and will be able to subdue the other. So it's an arms race, I guess, in a fantasy world. So you'll find that escapism. You'll find those multiple characters, multiple storylines, and all that good stuff.
Fascinating. So before we dive even further into the creation of your first book, let's talk a little bit more about you, Jordan. So from your bio, you are a jack of all trades. You're an avid reader, you're a gamer, you're a history nerd, you do a lot of stuff. So is it safe to say you've always been a creative person growing up?
Yeah, I think so. Writing very early on was stoked by my love of reading. I can remember reading the Redwall books all throughout middle school. The book fairs, when they still had book fairs, well, I think they still do, but back in elementary school, the book fair was like the coolest thing ever, be able to go and buy some books. So reading Redwall, but I was big into Legos, always building Legos. I remember the first time I saw Star Wars, age 6, all these things that just like set my young mind, to flight with all the, the escapism and stuff. But yes, always trying to create, always trying to write. I used to try to draw my own Where's Waldo books, like when I was a kid. So, it's always been a part of me, the creative side.
And what part, or I should say, at what point in your journey as a creator and as an author did this first story that you've had with you for a long time, really shine through to make you think, you know what, I think it's time I make something my own? That aha moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the path to the creation of this book, Mourn Not the Mortals, is littered with really bad attempts at writing previous books. So this is the first one that came through all the way, and the idea came to me around 2014, 2015. So it's been a long time. So I wasn't writing anything at the time. I was just, having ideas bounce around in my head, but I didn't seriously sit down and start writing it until 2019. So thinking of it, the idea came to fruition over a decade ago. It took me 5 years to sit down and write it, and then it took me 6 years from there to publish it. So just a lot of space in between the creation, the the thinking of it, and the publishing it. So, but I would say that probably 2019 is when I told myself I need to stop joking around with this spiral bound notebook of notes and maps and all this stuff and actually write. This world I've created, I need to populate it now with words.
Absolutely. And that's kind of like the same sentiment I've had with a lot of authors on this show, that they've always had it in some form, like either in a notebook, recording, it was on their drive. They have been working on it here and there, but they realize, you know what? Let me just get the story out of the way because it's been with me for a long time. Let's see where this goes. And that leads into a beginning set of questions, which talks about the creation of this book. So walk me through it, Jordan. It's 2019. You're now starting to write this story. And as you're sitting in front of your computer, what are the goals that you are imagining or thinking of as the author, but also in the back of your mind, understanding what promises you're making to your future readers?
Well, I've said this before, but for me, in terms of getting this book out there, it's not that deep. I don't have there's not any like big morals or parallels I'm trying to draw to real world, or be too heavy-handed, I guess. It all starts with I created some cool characters and a cool world and combined it with a cool story, and I just want to tell people about it, honestly. It's not much deeper than that, but I am promising that as a reader, if you jump into the world of Mourn Not the Mortals, it's part one of a 4-book series called the Shattered Sphere Saga. So you will be getting an epic ride from one book to the next. I promise you that there are at least 3 more. I won't pull a Robert Jordan and add plus 10 to that. So yeah, I'm promising an epic journey that will, maybe something you'll like to escape to, and I hope that you connect with these characters along the way, because it's only going to grow in scope. This first book in my mind is kind of small and kind of starting things out, but I have grand plans. But don't we all at the beginning?
Yes, that is very true, Jordan. Absolutely very true. Now, jumping ahead, so you're now writing it, you're going through a series of edits. At what point did you start telling people that you're working on this book? And what was their reaction like?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would tell people here and there, because I don't feel like it became really real until probably a third draft. The first draft, like I said, I started writing in 2019. I finished the first draft in 2020. It was garbage, just like all first drafts are and should be. And after the second draft, actually went on a trip to Asheville, North Carolina in fall of 2023. It was like a delayed honeymoon for my wife and I. And going from Texas to Asheville is just a beautiful place over there in North Carolina. And it was on that trip where I came up with a name for the story, because I didn't even have a title. The book had been done for 2.5 years and I didn't have a title in my head. And I also decided that I should maybe get a little bit more serious, and that's why I created like the Instagram page or whatever and started connecting with other authors. So yeah, it took from writing it's 2 full drafts before I started really getting serious, and people would say, "Oh, you're writing a book? That's cool. What's it about?" I don't know. I can't, I still struggle today. Like I had to sit down and write something concrete just for this interview. But even at events I've had in the past couple of weeks, I've had some in-person events and people ask me, "What's it about?" And I'm just like, read the blurb, and then sort of give them a quick summary. But yeah, they're always surprised, always shocked. Not shocked, but there are a few people that, at these events, they said, "So you wrote this book?" And I say, "Yeah, that's me." No matter what, if you're sitting behind the table wearing a shirt with the title of the book on it, they will still ask you if you're the author of the book. So yeah, it took 6 years from finishing the first chapter to hitting the publish button. But yeah, everyone was always encouraging. They're always, I've had people from the very beginning that have been interested in it. My family's always they were always asking me, and my dad was banking on retiring on the on the riches that I make from this book. That is not going to happen. It's a joke on my dad's part, but yeah, everyone's been very supportive, and yeah, so it's since the very beginning I've had people that have been interested in the journey, so it's cool to see that most of them are still here.
Amazing. And would you say that from those initial reactions and comments that they have in a way validated your goals that you set out with when you began this journey?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I remember writing the prologue years ago, and I thought it was so cool and so good. I remember reading it to my roommates, and thinking back on that now, that prologue didn't even make it into the book because it was, not only was it not great, but it didn't fit in. So, yeah, I mean, after the first draft, before I was done with the first draft, I was already thinking about the second draft and butchering it and tearing it apart. So, yeah, and then once the third draft went out to beta readers, and from there it was pretty much all positive feedback. I had a lot of good notes. Not everyone finished it. It's kind of how it is with beta readers. I think I got 6 people to finish it out of 12 or so. I didn't have a lot. But yeah, since publishing, the beta readers had good feedback. ARC readers had good feedback, and all the reviews have been great. I think I have 1 3-star review. So I'm not going to complain about that. I'm still looking forward to the day I can add a 1-star review to my wall of. I'm going to print it out and put it up on my wall. But yeah, everyone's been very supportive. I would say that I didn't have any expectations of. Really, I didn't have a number of how many books I was going to sell. I said maybe if I sell 20, that'll be cool. But I was able to do better than that. So yeah, like I said, I didn't set out to make a bestseller or anything. I just wanted to tell the story and share it with people. So, and I'm very happy with the reaction and how people have taken to it and reacted to it.
Absolutely. That's really good to hear, Jordan, because it leads kind of into a next set of questions, which are what I call reflective questions. And the first of these questions is that, as authors, as creators, whenever we're writing something new, especially if it's like our first book, there's a lot of pressure on us, or we put a lot of pressure on ourselves because it is the first of something that we have created. And sometimes the first is just enough for some people. For others, it's a step in the door. But ultimately, in today's digital climate, there is that hesitancy to share it with others because on one end, you could meet great people who share similar interests, be that fellow authors or readers. On the other side, we do leave ourselves exposed to a lot of negativity, hate speech, trolls, and what have you. Mm-hmm. And of course, imposter syndrome is always going to be in the back of everyone's mind. Mm-hmm. So, with that said, Jordan, have you ever had those moments of heightened anxiety or imposter syndrome? And if so, or if not, what has disciplined you to continue going forward with this series?
Well, I will say that I kind of joke around with friends, and I say that publishing this book sort of broke my brain in a way, because I had no aspirations to write a bestseller or anything. But on the other hand, if you don't talk about your book as an indie self-published author, if you don't talk about your book, nobody will, and it will fade into obscurity beneath the hundreds of thousands of other self-published books. So I have no knack for marketing. I'm not a salesperson. And so I got burned out pretty quickly at trying to push it out there. But on the other hand, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, why are you doing this? It's not, you should start writing the next book. Which for me, yeah, I mean, it is hard not to compare yourself, because I see a lot of authors also self-publish, independent authors around me who have released their books at the same time, which is so cool to see. And they're already working on the second book. And I'm just like, I have written 6 words of the second book. But I promise you there will be more. But yeah, I mean, I haven't had any, like you said, imposter syndrome is real. It's always there. I'm always thinking like, is this, can I do this? Can I finish this thing? Are people going to want to read this? Are people going to care? There's one of my favorite authors is David Mitchell, and he wrote Cloud Atlas and some of those other books. But he has a quote that just always resonates with me. From Cloud Atlas, one of the characters says, whenever you show someone something that you've written, you give them a sharpened stake, you lie down in your coffin, and you say, when you're ready. It's just like putting yourself out there and be like, just destroy me. I'm opening myself to the world, and all the criticism in it. But yeah, like I said, people have been kind. Reactions have been great. No trolls yet, no hate speech, not yet, fingers crossed. But but yeah, you have to quell those doubts. The imposter syndrome, it's going to be there. It'll be there for my, at the end, when I publish the fourth book, it'll still be there. So it just comes down to how you're going to master it, and how you're going to, drown that voice out, I suppose.
Absolutely. And the next question that follows up to this actually goes back to what you mentioned in the beginning, that you began this journey back in 2019, a year before the COVID years, the pandemic years. And the reason I bring this up, Jordan, is that a previous author of mine made a post saying that 2019 and the COVID years was kind of like the golden age or the awakening of independent creators showcasing their work. Now, a lot of people I've had on the show have had differing answers to this question. Some say we're in a renaissance, some say we're in a new age, others say we're not in an age at all. And it's this question. In your opinion, Jordan, as an independent author, do you believe that we are in a renaissance of some kind for independent creators or not so much?
I mean, it really feels like it. I've only been in this world for officially a published author a few months, but since I joined, created Instagram and an online presence and started interacting with other authors in the community, it feels like a renaissance. So many talented authors I see out there doing the same thing, publishing books, and it's great to see. I have a list, I have a shelf on my Goodreads account that is just a list of fellow indie authors that I want to get to all these, But yeah, I mean, I think it is. I feel like every week I'm seeing another great book, another recommendation. And of course, there's the way that Amazon, at least KDP, is set up. They make it pretty easy, so it's very streamlined to to get the process going these days. But not to say that there's not a lot of work involved. There is for self-published authors, but yeah, I do believe that. This is a golden age, at least from what I can see. It doesn't seem like there's going to be a drought anytime soon.
Absolutely. As I said, this question has a lot of differing answers. Some say that we are in a golden age. Some say we're in more of a renaissance. Others say that we're not. And those are completely fair answers. And they all kind of lean to my next favorite segment, which is the business side of being an author. So, Jordan, as a little icebreaker for this segment of the interview, when you began writing your first book, did you already have an idea of the audience in mind? And in your opinion, when should an author really have an idea of their audience? The drafting phase or the marketing phase?
I feel like you need to assess at both points. When I sat down to start writing in the beginning, I wasn't really writing with readers in mind. It was more like, I just want to tell this story for myself. But at a certain point I said, okay, yeah, but who's going to care, beyond you? So, yeah, I mean, ideally, my ideal reader, they appreciate deep world building, multiple point of view characters, converging storylines, and minimal romance. It's not really a theme in my book. I know that's like all the rage these days, so I'll just put that out there right now and say there's no spice. Sorry, everyone. But yeah, and then at the very end, I would say, okay, I've written it. Now, who are my people? Who are the readers? So,
right.
Yeah. So not at the very beginning, I didn't have the biggest answer, but when I started, quote unquote marketing, I was looking for those fans of epic fantasy, of high fantasy. So I have yet to figure out that algorithm and that code and where they all are, but I know they're out there. So I know that, but the readers that I have read the book so far have all enjoyed it to my knowledge. So, but yeah, you definitely need to angle if, at least I was angling for readers of fans of epic and high fantasy rather than maybe like cozy or urban or romance, any of that stuff. Not to say that they wouldn't enjoy it, but I guess there's a preference there for everyone.
Right. And that kind of leads to the next question, which is, of course, the readership. Now, in my opinion, Jordan, I feel the readership is more important than the audience. And the reason why I say that is the audience, while the main group to target is a broad group, and we're always conditioned to believe that that's the sole group we should market to. But not a lot of people market to an audience in mind. Sometimes they market to a particular readership or fans of the genre. And that's completely fair. And in my research, I've learned that there are 4 readership types: middle grade, YA, NA, which is for new adult, and AF, which is for adult fiction. Now, each has its own set of rules and expectations when it comes to the creators as well as the readers. Now, for you, Jordan, would you agree that your book tends to be more on the adult fantasy or adult fiction side, or is it written in a way where, while yes, adult fiction is the group, it can also be read for new adults?
Mhm. Yeah, I would say it's more catered towards new adults. It is, it leans towards grimdark for sure.
Mm.
But some of the authors I cite, it is nowhere near as dark as George R. Martin or Stephen
Yeah,
Erickson or any of that stuff, Joe Abercrombie. Nowhere near. Um, Although it tends to lean in the direction of grimdark. But I would say probably, yeah, new adult. But on the other hand, I have had some people ask me at table of I'm trying to sell the book, is if it's suitable for an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old. No, it's not.
nope.
No, it's not. It's not like gruesome or anything, but it's adult themes. One of the main characters is a highly functioning alcoholic, so who street fights for a living. So that doesn't exactly scream young adult to me, but who knows? But yeah, I would say it caters more towards NA for sure.
Nice. And this kind of goes into what you mentioned before, how your book has all these themes and elements, but it's not trying to be like George R. Martin or the author you said before, who will add on 3 more books to a series that didn't need any more. And that comes down to this balancing act of the kind of author you want to be. Where on one side, we want to showcase our individuality as authors, but on the other side, we want to showcase stories that we have enjoyed growing up. As you mentioned before, Redwall, which is one of my favorite series, and I had the opportunity to read all of the books, which was, a long overdue accomplishment. But going back to the question at hand, this balancing act of our individuality and the stories we've admired growing up, can appear in our own writings one way or another. So for you, Jordan, how have you been able to balance the two?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, because I've heard authors say that they don't like to read while they are writing their book because they don't want their prose to be influenced by whoever they're reading. And I get that for sure. I think during parts of writing this book, I was reading the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb, and I saw myself incorporating a little bit of language from her books. And my editor, when she was editing it, she would leave notes. She would say, "Hey, can you put some of your Robin Hobb lingo here at this part?" Which I thought was kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a balance between telling your own world, and I mean, I think it seems like almost every story has been told. There's no original ideas anymore. I don't know if I necessarily believe that, but yeah, I'm not. I don't know. I guess I'm not trying to pay homage. I definitely take elements from some of my favorite authors. Like I mentioned, Steven Erickson. He is my all-time favorite fantasy author. So yeah, and he in turn was influenced by Glenn Cook. So both of those authors influenced me, but I'm not trying to recreate anything that they have done or pay homage, I guess. Rather, they influence me, because when you think back to some of the early fantasy books, like Sword of Shannara or Wheel of Time, a lot of them
Right.
seemed like just Tolkien clones, Tolkien homages or whatnot. So, which back then, fine, cool. I want more of that, but things have changed since then. And, I think there's nothing wrong with paying homage, but yeah, it is a balancing act between trying to find your own voice and paying respect to those that came before you. So, Erickson paved the path for me and hundreds of others, and I hope to do that for those that come after.
That's a very good way to put it, Jordan. And that kind of goes into the next question, which is very important, which is, of course, networking, because networking as authors, especially as independent authors, is a must. And I've learned a lot from the people that I've had the opportunity to network, and they in turn have helped me with some projects of mine, as well as helping me when I was in a bind. So, as a fun little question, Jordan, in your opinion, how important is it for independent authors to really begin growing a networking platform or begin networking? And are there any people you want to give a personal shout out to who have helped you along the way?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly important. I know the title is independent author, but you can't do it alone, you know. I mean, you can try. It's very difficult, but the community, I was welcomed into the community right away. I at first just started asking questions in some big Facebook groups for fantasy writers. And then from there, I created an Instagram, and from that point on, it's been nothing but a welcoming community. Whether they be fellow indie authors, ARC readers, or other bookstagrammers or whatever you want to call them, and editors, just everything from like yourself, content creators as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very tight knit community, and it's very accepting and very encouraging. So I believe networking is very important. I should have started it earlier, honestly. And I'm still not that great at it, but I try to be active. I try to interact with as many authors and readers in the community as possible. But yeah, I've had a lot of great I wouldn't say mentors, but people who have shown me around. One in particular, his name's Justin Greer. He's the author he's also a self-published independent fantasy author. And he did some editing in my book, additional editing, and he helped me format the book, because I tried to format the book myself through Scrivener, and it drove me insane. So I turned to him and his skills, and he's he helped me get this thing out there in a lot of ways. So, but he went on this entire journey that I went on, a year before. So I took a lot of cues from him. I said, hey, how do I know what's your the length, the size of your book? Are you going matte or glossy for your cover? How do I, should I put a dash here? Everything's, stuff from really simple stuff and things about like helping me through the publishing process, about margins and covers and all that stuff. And so, yeah, he's been a great influence. You should check out his books. He has a series of the cozy fantasy books called The Garden Knight, but he's also releasing an epic fantasy book called The Servant next month. So, and I'm ARC reading that. It's my first ARC read. Super excited about it. So, but yeah, Justin Greer he's been helpful. Shout out to him. But overall, yeah, there's just so many authors, so many members of the community. Everyone's just been so encouraging. So I cannot overstate the importance enough about networking. Scott, you got it.
You're absolutely right, Jordan. Networking is huge for indie authors, and also we learn a lot from the people we network, and we build great, lasting friendships and relationships with them. And that's how we form our own crew. Whether we have cover artists, we have editors, we have ARC readers, beta readers, and it's really nice because going back to what you said, also we have the term indie authors, but we're not solely independent. We're not making this book on our own. It takes, what's the phrase? It takes a village to raise a person, or something along those lines. And it is absolutely true, because it's a lot of people that really bring a story to life, regardless if you're traditional, hybrid, or indie. And this sort of leads into another question, a rather fun question, which I don't typically ask my guests a lot, but I'm always eager to hear their answers. Looking back on your journey thus far, Jordan, how different would your life be if you did not pursue that drive to publish your story or begin writing your story back in 2019?
Yeah, I mean, it was a fairly big when I first wrote the first draft, it was out there. I was happy about my accomplishment, but I didn't know how serious I was about getting it out there. But once I did get serious after approaching the third draft, these past couple years, it became a driving, it became like a purpose, something to strive towards. I'm not the best planner in terms of like life, like where do you see yourself 5 years from now? I have no idea, man. So which is difficult to do when you have like a wife and a child, like a small child. You need to think more about those things in the future about, for your family and whatnot. But having this, I don't know where I would have put the creativity. All of my hobbies are solitary. I like to look at birds. I like to play board games. I like to read. Solitary hobbies for the most part. But none of them require like me pouring creativity into it, really. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think these characters would have cropped up whether or not I liked it, and I would have to put them somewhere. So, yeah, I think just having this trajectory, the book, this journey that the story it demanded to be told, ever since its inception over a decade ago. So, but yeah, I don't know. I can't imagine, honestly. I think it would be a lot more. I don't know. I can't imagine not being a part of the community now. So it would be more boring. Life would, for sure. I think so. Not any less fulfilling, of course, but yeah, I'm glad that I had that outlet, and I'm glad that I had the community that I could share with.
That's amazing, Jordan. That's absolutely incredible. And this kind of goes into another question, another heavy hitter, very loaded question. So brace yourself, because this is a very loaded question. So the context for this question is, I've been doing this show for now 6-7 years, an opportunity to meet a wide range of people, from historians and authors, which you broke it down. It could be academics, students, traditionally published authors, academically published authors, hybrid, indie, aspiring, debuting, what have you. I've learned a lot from them. And the one piece of advice that I've really taken to heart is that there are two paths: to be an author, to be known as an author. One is dedicated to the craft, the other is dedicated to the business. Both have their own set of rules and expectations, but they lead to the same outcome. But with that said, the second path, to be known as an author, is the most enticing, but leads to a lot of unrealistic goals and expectations. And the hard truth about this industry is that there is no guarantee your book's going to be a financial success or a success in general. I'm sorry to say that, viewers and listeners, but it is absolutely true. And it is a learning experience. Now, are there exceptions to the rules? Absolutely. But that's what they are: exceptions. Because generally speaking, a person's book is not going to be an overnight success or the start of their legacy. And it can be a very challenging moment at that point in time, where many authors will probably reconsider writing as their main source of income, which it should never be, but for some, it is their main choice. So here is the question, Jordan. Everything you've learned thus far, from the interactions you have had from your writers group to your inner circle, how would you console a fellow writer who is struggling to understand this notion that, while yes, there is no guarantee in this industry you're going to be a success, but that shouldn't be seen as a drawback, but instead a learning experience?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is a learning experience. You're going to get humbled a lot every step of the way. Yeah, like I said, I have no intentions of being known as an author. I suppose that could change in 2 or 3 years. Who knows? But right now, I'm an author. I wrote a book, but it's not what I'm known for. So yeah, I mean, we talked about imposter syndrome. That will not go away, whether or not at least once I finish this series, I don't think that's something that ever goes away. So yeah, I mean, don't get discouraged. It is humbling. Overnight bestsellers don't happen. Really, they happen rarely. And who knows? It could be, you could capture lightning in a bottle. I'm not discouraging that, but yeah, it's hard. So I think just have realistic expectations. Writing a book itself is a huge endeavor and
Yes.
it's a huge success. Once you're done with it, it's a huge success story. So it's a big accomplishment, and I don't think that's anything to to downplay. So even if you publish a book and 10 people read it, there's 10 people who took pride and took joy, hopefully, in that creation that you worked so hard on. So I would say, yeah, I mean, you don't get discouraged. If you wrote the book, it's a huge accomplishment in and of itself. Honestly, from there, it's hard to, I guess, how can I say this? It's hard to because I've had voices in my head as well that imposter syndrome say, okay, well, you did this book, like, but are you really going to do this again? You're going to do this 3 more times. And that will, that's just something you have to contend with. But yeah, I mean, it's write for yourself, write for fun, write to create. I guess there's nothing wrong with writing to make it your living, but that's not going to happen for most of us. So you have to have the passion there. If there's no soul or joy behind it, it's, how is it any different from a machine writing it? So I don't know, just yeah, a bit of a word salad there, but just some words of encouragement.
But you're absolutely right, Jordan, and it is, very, very true. I've talked to a lot of people on the show, and they've given the same answer that you've given, that you really have to think of, are you going to be writing to write for fun, or are you going to be writing in terms of building a career? In fact, one guest I actually had earlier today said, if you want to go down the path of writing as a job, they recommend don't go into the publishing world as the job. Work as a copy editor, work as a proofreader, do technical writing, do any form of paid writing that's going to pay the bills. Because that's the most important thing. You're going to need something that pays the bills, especially if you're going the direction of an independent author. Because, as I've said numerous times in the past, viewers and listeners, independence, yes, you do own your work, but you're responsible for everything else. That means hiring an editor and paying them, hiring a cover artist and paying them, and doing all the necessary stuff. And it's not easy sometimes. It is not easy, especially, let's say, if you want to go and do an event. You got to make sure you have enough money to not only table and reserve your spot, but also have enough copies to last you how many days you're going to be there. It's a lot of work. But if you understand the business mindset, if you understand the kind of author you want to be, you will be fine. That's not to say that, just as Jordan said, it will probably be, easy. It's going to have a lot of difficulties. But if you understand the business and you understand the kind of person you want to be with your stories, you will be just fine. And there was actually one final question, a fan question, Jordan, which I wanted to ask you, which is this. Was there ever a character in your story that you have considered potentially writing a spin-off for?
Yeah, definitely. Already running that idea around in my head. I've been thinking of, prequel novellas and whatnot. There was supposed to be, there's 4 main characters in Mourn Not the Mortals. There was a 5th one. And I agonized over her placement in the story and whether or not they would make it into the first book. And I eventually pushed them out, saved it for the next book, and that cut the word count down by about 30 or 40,000 words. So so it was a substantial cut, taking that out. And so I've since thought how to incorporate that. So, but I think of a lot of authors have like a reader magnet, for newsletters. Maybe they offer like a novella or something for free. And I was thinking, like, that would be a great idea. One of my characters is an old, grizzled linguist who specializes in dead languages, and he has a dark past. So when I thought about, well, he has a lot of story to tell in his earlier years. So I think it would be cool to tell his story. Yeah, I mean, already the gears are turning in my head. So I thought about that, but I'm also like, okay, write the main story first. But spinoffs, yeah, spinoffs would be cool. Expand, make my own Cosmere, so to speak.
Awesome. Same thing with mine. I start with the main story and then branch out into other pathways, because you never know. Possibly one of the spinoffs is probably going to be the books that really get your name out there. And that's okay too, viewers and listeners. It may not be your first book that really gets your name out there. Maybe your 3rd, maybe your 5th, maybe even your 20th book. Whatever book gets your name out there, it's going to be an incredible moment, because it'll mean that after all the blood, sweat, and tears that went into the creation of these incredible works, now going to pay off in the end. And with that, viewers and listeners, we conclude another amazing author interview here on the show. A huge thank you to Jordan Smith for making his official debut here on the channel. Now, Jordan, where can people find you on social media if they want to reach out and connect? And where can people buy a copy of your first book?
I'm definitely most active on Instagram. I think it's jordan.smith.author. jordansmith.author. So yeah, I'm most active there. I'm also active on Threads. I try to be. Haven't quite figured Threads out yet. So those are the main ways that you can reach me or contact me. I like to interact with fans and readers and whatnot. And you can purchase the book. It's available for purchase via Amazon as a paperback and as an ebook. And I just got it up on Barnes & Noble's website a couple of weeks ago as well. So for all those who prefer not to shop through Amazon, I get it. Barnes & Noble is also an option. So one day I'll be able to sell direct, but that is not today. So, but that's where you can reach me, and that's where you can buy the book.
Awesome. I will link all those down below in the description of this video. Thank everyone for joining us. Another amazing interview here on the show. A huge thank you to Jordan for making his official debut on the channel. We wish him the very best on his journey with the first book, as well as the next books in the series, as well as the spin-off series that he has in the works in the back burner. Make sure to follow him on all his social media platforms, as well as make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with future author videos coming this week, as well as the weeks after. And as always, this is the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill signing out. Wishing you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. And until next time, we'll see you in the next video.